Sramana, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you very much, Arturo. It's a pleasure. You know, what the beauty of being able to do all this virtually is that I can be with so many of you in so many different corners of the world without physical distance being an issue, which is why I started 1 Million by 1 Million as the first and only global virtual accelerator. And now in this COVID crisis, it's all turning out to be extremely wise that we are able to continue doing what we are doing without, you know, interruption, without any disruption whatsoever. So first and foremost, congratulations on being able to pivot and pull this all together in a virtual mode. Arturo asked me to speak about my book, Bootstrapping, Weapon of Mass Reconstruction. Now, as you may know, this book was written in 2008 when a different crisis was raging through the world. And just to give you a little bit of a story of what happened at that time, I was writing at the time, I was writing a Forbes column, and I had written a piece, a column called The Future of Publishing. And in it, I had projected that Amazon should be getting into their own publishing label and letting vast numbers of authors publish on their own, you know, whether you call it self-publishing or Amazon-driven publishing. That's what I had written about, and Amazon called me and asked me if I wanted to do books with them, and that's how the Entrepreneur Journey series of books came about. And that's when Bootstrapping, Weapon of Mass Reconstruction was published with, I think it has about 12 or 14 case studies of bootstrapped entrepreneurship. Now, I have been working on bootstrapping and bootstrapped entrepreneurship for a very long time now. I think I started first working on it in 2006, very early in my in the history of my blog. And then when we launched in 2010, we launched 1 Million by 1 Million. Bootstrapping became one of the cornerstone methodology elements of how to build companies. It has always been my observation that bootstrapping is a better way to build a business than raising huge amounts of money. Now, of course, you do have the option of bootstrap first, raise money later, which is again the philosophy that we use in 1 Million by 1 Million. But right now, given what's going on with the COVID situation, it is extremely important for us to, you know, consider bootstrapping in even more important light, basically, even more brilliant lights. And that is because of certain dynamics of the financing ecosystem at the moment. The financing ecosystem has not frozen. There are financings happening. And in fact, even in our community, which is early stage startups, I have introduced entrepreneurs to investors that would be relevant to that particular investor. And we are getting responses. VCs are telling me that, yes, we want to look at deals, and some of them want to invest. You know, some of them, in fact, one of them told me that in the 2008 crisis, they found a couple of companies that were really interesting, invested in them, and those companies have blossomed to be very, very successful companies at this point. And so they would like to do that again, is find some really good companies now. So that's one point of view, and that point of view exists. But there is also a very significant point of view where people have already invested in other companies. They have portfolios, and they have to make those portfolio companies survive first. Think about it. It's the most natural thing to do, right? Investors, especially the micro VCs with small funds, who don't have huge amounts of capital. So whatever small amounts of capital that they're working with, whether it's 15 million, 20 million, 30 million, 60 million, if they have a portfolio of 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 companies, they have to make sure that those companies don't go out of business, otherwise they will lose all their investments. So the first consideration is going to be investing in the companies that are already in their portfolio. Of course, this puts entrepreneurs who are earlier on in the trajectory at a disadvantage. And what is your option? Your option inevitably is bootstrapping. And I, being a tremendous believer in bootstrapping, I think many of you are going to build very, very strong companies coming out of this at the other end of this crisis. And you're going to come out looking really strong and really resilient, because people who succeed in building bootstrap companies, especially building bootstrap companies through tough times, end up creating incredibly robust cultures in their companies. And that is a very sustainable element in a company. So what I'm going to do today is first give you some mechanics of bootstrapping, the ones that I find, since I wrote that book, 2008, Bootstrapping Weapon of Mass Reconstruction, we've done a lot of research, and we've actually published several other books in the domain of bootstrapping. There were 2 others in this Entrepreneur Journey series. One is Bootstrapping with a Paycheck. The other is Bootstrapping using services. And those are 2 methodology elements that we use all the time in the 1 Million by 1 Million program. So I'm going to talk a bit about each of those. And then I'm going to talk about a third one that I have recently become very interested in, and I find it being extremely effective, which is bootstrapping by piggybacking. So I'll give you a bit more about those 3. Remember, our philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later, or not at all. We don't think that you have to raise money to be a successful business, and some businesses don't have the characteristics of raising money. Investors are trying to, VCs are trying to go from $0 to $100 million in 5 to 7 years. Not all businesses have the characteristics to do that. So you're going to have to, often you're going to find yourself that you are not necessarily a quote unquote fundable company, because you don't have that high velocity trajectory, but you can still build a very, good, successful, profitable, attractive business for yourself and your colleagues and so forth. And that's something we support tremendously. So let's start with bootstrapping with a paycheck. If you are in a situation where you haven't yet started a company, you're noodling, you're thinking about ideas, you're trying to validate, I would say that hold on to your job. If you have a job, and if you're thinking about entrepreneurship with a job, I would really suggest that you consider keeping the job, keeping the paycheck, and starting your company on the side. So working nights and weekends and so forth, you can actually make a lot of progress. And the most important thing to remember there is validation. Not all business ideas validate. And you have to reduce your risk of failure, you have to follow a reasonably concrete path to validating your idea. And as a thumb rule, unless you have lots of savings and you're willing to take like 2 years of no pay situation, it's better to hold on to the paycheck and finish at least the validation phase within the context of a bootstrapping with paycheck framework. And there are a few questions that I often get on this is, do you disclose to your employer? Ideally, it's better to disclose to your employer. And these days, employers like entrepreneurial employees. So most likely, unless you're competing with your employer, they're not going to mind. So just to keep things above board, it's better to let people know. Now, in our experience with 1 million by 1 million, we have even had companies go all the way to break even in a bootstrapping with a paycheck mode. So it really is quite case specific and situation specific as to when you should quit your job and go full-time with your company. So by all means, of the three creative bootstrapping techniques that I'm going to discuss today, bootstrapping with a paycheck is a tried and true one, and a sequel volume to the Entrepreneur Journey's Bootstrapping Weapon of Mass Reconstruction deals with this topic in its entirety with case studies. The next one that I want to deal with is bootstrapping using services. So again, there's a myth in the industry that if you do a services business, you cannot build a product company. This cannot be a bigger falsehood. You know, Oracle was built in a bootstrapping with services mode. Larry Ellison went to do some contract services for a company or client and discovered their need and came up with the concept of the database. That's how Oracle was started. So that was a bootstrapping with services situation. And the beauty of bootstrapping with services that I really like is the opportunity to get customer intimacy. So if you are doing consulting projects, contract software development projects, and so on for a customer in a domain where you have expertise and in a domain where you might be interested in starting a product company, it's a brilliant opportunity to go in there and learn what the customers need, what the customers are asking for, and so on and so forth. So I would say that bootstrapping with services, the number one benefit of that is customer intimacy. And the second benefit is that you get cash. So if you're doing a services project that is a paid assignment, you also get essentially your seed capital through bootstrapping with services. Again, this is very much a tried and true mechanism. One of my favorite companies, case studies of bootstrapping with services is Alteryx. Alteryx is now a multi-billion-dollar public company, but it was started in a bootstrapping with services mode. In fact, the CEO first told me his story back in 2013 or 14, somewhere in that thereabouts. And then about, in the last couple of years, they've had tremendous success. They've gone public, huge success in the public market, etc. I am very much in touch with the CEO and that team, so I know what's happening there. It's a wonderful case study. You can actually go read the case study on the 1 million by 1 million blog. So there's plenty of examples. And again, we have another case study based book where I discuss bootstrapping with services in huge detail. So that's my number 2 suggestion as far as methodology elements is concerned. And the third one, which is a newer concept, is bootstrapping by piggybacking. So right now, if you look at the software ecosystem, it's mainly software as a service, and many of the software as a service companies are trying to do platform as a service. So of course, the million-pound gorilla in that space is Salesforce.com. And Salesforce.com has been doing platform as a service for a long time. They have a tremendous ecosystem, and they have already spawned many wonderful companies, many success stories on their platform. So people who don't have to build the entire stack to build a SaaS company, they can build on top of the Salesforce stack and just put the final layer to build a product. And I first started learning about this in the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, maybe 2007 timeframe. A company called Aptus came to my house and told me what they were doing. And I knew these guys because these guys had done a company before, a venture-funded company that friends of mine had funded called Nextans, and that was in contract management. So, and it was at that time it was a licensed software company. Nextans was a licensed software company. They raised a lot of venture capital, but eventually the company didn't work. So this team knew everything there is to know about contract management, and they took that domain knowledge and put this Aptus company together on top of the Force.com platform. And by the time they came to see me to pitch their story, they had already done 5 million in revenue and 100% bootstrap, not one penny of financing. Subsequently, they ended up raising a lot of money, and they were eventually acquired by private equity. But there are many companies like this that were built on the Salesforce.com ecosystem. Recently, not long ago at all, this company called Velocity, which was built in the same way, was acquired by Salesforce.com for $1.3 billion. And you may know about Viva, which is one of the most successful companies on the Force.com ecosystem that has been a public company for a while now. And it's, more than $600 million in revenue, multi-billion-dollar market cap. So these are great, great stories of bootstrapping by piggybacking. So I would definitely encourage you to consider that. Last week, I spoke with a company from Romania that has built a $6 million business with $1 million in financing. Most of the early part was actually bootstrapped, and then they raised $1 million in financing and has now gotten to $6 million in revenue. This is a company that has done bootstrapping by piggybacking on the Wix ecosystem. Wix is this web development platform that is very popular for small businesses, and they have built an integration with Wix and have piggybacked on the Wix ecosystem, and a large percentage of their revenue, over 30% of their revenue, is coming from Wix. So these are really interesting case studies of bootstrapping by piggybacking, and so those are the three examples that I want to give you. I think I'm getting indications that you're ready for Q&A. No, not yet. Keep going. Okay. All right. So anyway, those, I think from a methodology point of view, those are 3 pointers that I would give you. I want to give you one other pointer in terms of action item, actionable things that you take away from this session today. Right now, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, you probably have a lot of anxiety, and you're trying to figure out how to cope with that anxiety. There is something that is available for free on the 1 Million by 1 Million blog, which is all our case studies. And this is over 1,000 case studies of successful entrepreneurs who have very candidly, very generously shared how they have put one foot before the other. We have over 100 unicorn case studies, over 400 venture-funded company case studies, and over 400 bootstrap company case studies. And all of them are available for free on the blog. So I want you to do this. As you're listening to me, either now live or in recording, open up your calendar. Whether it's Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, doesn't matter. Open up your calendar and find a slot of 1 hour. And put this on repeat. Every day, find an hour for meditation. And I'm going to tell you how to do this meditation right now. I want you to go into Entrepreneur Journeys on the 1 Million by 1 Million blog and read 5 case studies every day. Every case study that you read is a simulation of sitting down and having a coffee or a lunch with one of these entrepreneurs. So you're getting the opportunity to get into the heads of each of these entrepreneurs who have done it from nothing, right? Built something from nothing. And you are getting to travel that journey with that entrepreneur. Every day, do 5 of these. in 30 days, you would have gotten into the heads or had coffee with 150 entrepreneurs. What this will give you, firstly, is going to give you inspiration, because it's very inspiring to spend that time going through that journey with somebody who has done it and who can, give you confidence that it can be done. Every entrepreneur, every first-time entrepreneur who has succeeded, or every entrepreneur who has succeeded at one point was a first-time entrepreneur who was naive, who didn't know anything. I was one of those. So I made umpteen mistakes, but many of those mistakes are avoidable. So the second thing this exercise is going to give you is methodology. As you spend the time learning the tricks that people have used, the strategies, the maneuvers that people have used, you're going to learn from them. So you're going to get two things. You're going to get inspiration and you're going to get education. Inspiration is a spiritual meditation. Education is an empowerment meditation. So you feel empowered when you feel like, I know how to do this. I can apply this piece of methodology now to my situation and I'm going to be able to move forward with it. That gives you confidence. So you feel inspired, you feel confident. I believe that in 30 days, you will feel good. And I want you to come and talk to me. We do every week, we have 1 million by 1 million free public roundtables where I mentor entrepreneurs. I'll look at your projects and I'll give you feedback. You're very welcome to come talk to me. You're welcome to come anyway. You don't have to do this homework to come. You're welcome to come anyway. But do this. I think once you get the hang of it, it's going to become part of your routine until you've exhausted all our case studies, which will take you a while. So you will learn a lot. That's my promise. So with that, I will look at questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I made some notes, and actually I checked some of the case studies, and I encourage everyone else to check them as well. There are some questions, and I will take them. One is if you can share successful examples of bootstrapping from Eastern Europe. You mentioned the company from Romania, but maybe you can tell us more about, maybe you observed something specific about the entrepreneurial mindset of people from this region, because the way I see it, it's not the most entrepreneurial mindset ever. What do you think it's specific, and how we should encourage more this entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, there are a few things I've observed. There are pockets developing that are doing actually very well. The Czech Republic has done very, very well. There are lots of entrepreneurs that have come out of Prague and Brno, and we have case studies from Prague and Brno. In particular, there's one segment where they've had huge success. AVG and Avast are two antivirus software companies, consumer antivirus software companies that have done very well. We have those case studies. So that's, one category. Estonia has done very well. What I find interesting in Eastern Europe is that there's a lot of software talent. There seems to be an interest in software. And that, it gives you a huge advantage, because if you can code yourself, you are in a much better position to build a successful entrepreneurial venture. This Romanian company that I was just talking about, obviously the founder is a software guy. He can write code himself and build product himself. And that's where I think if you can build something, your MVP, maybe the first version, maybe the second version of your product yourself, gives you a tremendous advantage. And I think one of the issues that you face is the issue of risk, because, Silicon Valley is at the, extreme of being comfortable with risk taking. But most geographies, most places are not so comfortable with risk-taking. People are not so comfortable with failure. Silicon Valley is very comfortable with failure. If you fail in trying to do a startup, people don't really hold it against you. But that's not the case in lots of different parts of the world, which is why I gave you several risk mitigation techniques. So if you are feeling uncomfortable about risk, start a company while holding on to your paycheck. That is a tremendous risk mitigation strategy. Bootstrapping using services is a very good risk mitigation strategy. And this bootstrapping by piggybacking also is a risk mitigation strategy, because the other advantage of bootstrapping by piggybacking is whichever platform you piggyback on, they have marketplaces. The good ones, you need to find one that has a marketplace. Salesforce's marketplace, AppExchange, is a very powerful marketplace. And the reason that's been so successful in attracting developers is that developers then get access to customers through that. So these are risk mitigation techniques. And I'm a big believer in risk mitigation. Go look at this little video. It's a very short video, Probability of Fundraising, on our YouTube channel, the 1M Roundtable's YouTube channel. I talk about how to increase your probability of fundraising. And the main point is entrepreneurs do not succeed by taking stupid risks. Entrepreneurs succeed by taking calculated risks that you can control and mitigate. Does that answer your question, Arturo?
Yep, that was a question from our audience. And another one, if you still have time.
Sure.
Could you share some PR and media coverage to build techniques to build the visibility, credibility, to help sell and attract investor for an entrepreneur who is doing the first steps?
So another thing that we identified as a need very early on when we designed 1 million by 1 million back in 2010, what we do with our companies is we publish stories about the company. In our portfolio, companies have access to our PR and media cloud. And we have a lot of it because, as you know, I have a very large status on LinkedIn. I have 425,000 close to followers. And that includes a lot of journalists, a lot of analysts, a lot of people who write derivative stories based on what I do. So a great example actually is a story of a company called Zoho. Zoho today is almost $1 billion revenue company. I am not sure exactly how much they're doing at the moment, but definitely over $800 million in revenue. So by every measure, it's an incredibly successful company. It is a bootstrap company. It's a 100% bootstrap company. So I first found out about Zoho when the CEO came to pitch me his story in 2007. And I did a story, a case study, which is still on my blog, on the 1 million by 1 million blog. And I wrote this very lengthy story. And then at the time, I was also writing a column for Forbes. So I wrote a story about Sridhar Vembu and Zoho on Forbes. That's how the world first found out about Zoho, based on those pieces of writings. And then Zoho started getting tremendous amount of publicity because it's a superb story. So you're going to need to find somebody who believes in you and is willing to write something. It could be somebody who is just influential, doesn't have huge readership, but is influential in the media. So for our accelerator, I play that role, and I use my clout in the media to give them that visibility. But that's, guerrilla PR basically is the trick in guerrilla PR is to go after influential people, not the biggest media publications. You will not get a New York Times story or a Wall Street Journal story right away. You're going to have to, go through somebody who has, influence otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time and for your availability.